Welcome to a video overview of your syllabus for Management 341. This video is not intended to replace you carefully reading through this syllabus word for word, in fact probably multiple times, but it is an opportunity for me to do some explanations and hit some high points and make some points of emphasis for you. But please, by all means, plan to go through this on multiple occasions so that you'll completely understand it. It's really both a syllabus and a user's guide for the course. At the bottom of page 1, you'll see my contact information. Usually email is by far the best way to get in touch with me. I'm seldom in my office because 2 of my 3 courses, including this one, this semester are online and the other is a blended class, so I just really don't spend a lot of time in my office on campus. But I do check email pretty regularly and will respond fairly quickly to you. Now, page 2 gives you just a little bit about me, and at the bottom you can see a picture of who really runs my house. And she's really not happy right now because she's in timeout so that I can have a little bit of peace and quiet to record this, but she's the one who definitely is in charge of things around here. Now let's take a look at the course materials that you'll need. First of all, this organizational behavior textbook. Please note that we're going to use the 6th edition. A 5th or a 7th won't do. Make sure that you have the 6th. This will help maybe just a little bit with cost. Those of you who need the digital key, I believe the bookstore has that for you. Another required book is John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Again, make sure that's the 2.0 and not the original one, because we'll be covering material from that new edition for this. Both of these, again, are required course materials, and I'll show you just in a little while exactly how we're going to use them. Now, another one that's very important that you may want to purchase for extra credit purposes, because that's what I'll be using it for, is this book called The Coach and the Geek. I'll have some extra credit opportunities available throughout the semester for you to tap into, but you'll need that book in order to do it. Another 3 books are listed at the bottom here, and people ask me all the time for reading recommendations. These are 3 of the very best org behavior and leadership books that I've ever read. And I've heard all 3 of these guys speak on video, and they're tremendous as well, and would encourage you certainly to read and to watch anything that you can by those guys. Tremendous opportunities for you to grow and develop. Speaking of which, I've provided a listening and reading and watching guide for those of you who enjoy this sort of thing. If you find that org behavior and leadership is something that you really enjoy, and many people do, I've provided a good list for you to consult here. Recommend any one of them, especially on YouTube for listening and watching purposes. Much of this is free. You may like some of these a little better than others, but there's enough content by these individuals to keep you listening for years, literally. Some individually have that much content. So it's all about getting smarter, and we can't teach you everything you need to know in a classroom. So here are those resources for you. Now you can read the course description and the objectives on your own. So let's go immediately to how you'll be evaluated in this class. Basically, you will have 12 unit assignments. Most of those will be 1 week long. We'll talk about some exceptions in a little while. Each of them will be scored on a basis of 0 to 100 points. And here's how you get your 100 points. 40 points from the chapter test, and that will be from the org behavior textbook. 40 points for another test on the Maxwell Leadership 2.0 book, and then 20 points for 1 question and 2 answers per unit on PackBack. Many of you have probably already used this. If not, don't worry. It's very easy to find both on Blackboard and to get set up. We'll talk about that again in just a second. I will, from time to time, and this will be the only way that I do it, offer you some extra credit opportunities for variable amounts from the textbook, The Coach and the Geek. I've not decided exactly how I'm going to approach that yet, but if you have that book, then you'll be able to take advantage of those extra credit opportunities whenever they arise. It's really simple for you to calculate your grade in this course at any given point. All you have to do is divide the total of the scores that you have by the number of scores that you have. And you see the example here in italics. Very simple. And again, you're going to have 12 units in this course. You see the grading scale at the bottom. It's a basic 10.1 for your averages, and I will not use the plus or minus system. Now let's talk about how to effectively communicate with me in this class. I want you to keep in mind, if you will please, that I have about 120 students this semester for whom I'm responsible. There's no way in the world I can be a personal secretary to each one of you. Even if I wanted to do that, I couldn't. It's impossible. So I need you to be as proactive as you can be before you approach me about a particular issue. Do 4 things for me first. 1, read this syllabus and guide very carefully. You may very well find the answer that you're looking for here inside it. Also, please check Blackboard carefully. Odds are I probably have posted much of what you need there. Thirdly, I will be sending out a weekly guide basically every Sunday that will provide some information for you for that particular week and any updates that I need to make. Check that as well. And then also check your email, because that is a primary method of communication that I have for you. So before asking me anything, please check those 4 sources, and you may be able to save yourself the time and trouble of asking me about a particular issue. Now, of course, I know that won't resolve every single one of them, nor do I intend it or expect it to, but it will help you get an answer much more quickly, because I'm not on duty with email 24/7 and I don't have chat bots to help you. Also, it's going to be important for you to wait until sometime prior to the very last minute where an emergency won't be constituted because you have prepared in advance. That's the reason why procrastination, or at least one reason why procrastination is a cancer for college students, because sometimes it puts them in a bind and puts them in a bad position that they could have avoided had they done their work a little bit sooner. Now, in terms of technical issues, if you have those, please contact either Blackboard help from the MSU Help Desk or Packback. Both of those are pretty quick to respond and very good about what they do. I'm not an IT technician. Now, if something is missing or broken on Blackboard itself, as far as our course site is concerned, then, of course, let me know about that. Aside from that, though, I can't really help you much with technical stuff. Moving on to the section that tells you how to create an email to me. Now, so many of you probably don't need this, but there are some of you who probably do. It's amazing to me how poor the email etiquette is across the board for so many college students. First of all, keep your tone polite and respectful. This is a professional environment. I promise to do the same to you. We had a few kind of get their nose bent out of shape last semester and not necessarily follow this as much as I would have liked for them to. So please do that for me, and then follow this little formula for me so that I can help you better. Again, I'm more than happy to respond to you. I'm more than happy to help solve whatever problem you have that I can, as long as you have done your part first in trying to resolve it. So this little formula tells you how to approach me in terms of email so that I can give you the optimal help that you deserve. Let's also talk a little bit about grades. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that you don't receive grades from me. I simply record the grades that you earn. I do not give grades. You earn them. Whatever quality of work you do is exactly the grade that you will receive on your work. It's just that simple. Please make sure you understand that. I am not going to adjust grades in this class. You will earn the things that you earn by doing the things that you need to do at whatever level to be successful. So make sure you understand that. I'm not here to give grades. You're here to earn them. Now let's talk a little bit more about the unit assignments that you have. Remember, you have 12 of them. Every week, at 12:01 a.m. on Sunday morning, each unit will open, and they will be open for almost exactly a week until 11:59 p.m. that Saturday night. That gives you all week to complete both the chapter test and the Maxwell test for each unit, and any Coach and Geek extra credit opportunities that will be posted for that week. Some weeks there will be, some weeks there won't be. Now, our test will be basically all multiple choice, but don't get too excited about that, because a lot of that's going to come from scenario and application-based questions. These are given to you in that format because that's exactly how you encounter problems in the industry. Things don't come to you in some little tidy question package. They're often very messy, and you have a lot of scavenging to do in order to get the answer that you need. Now, I'm also realistic enough to know that in this day and age, when we have a problem, what we typically will do is go to sources that we're familiar with and comfortable with, and then find that information. Therefore, for purposes of both the chapter and the Maxwell test and the Coach and Geek tests too, you can use your notes, your textbooks, and open internet access. I am not going to do the Respondus lockdown. I don't think that's practical and a modern way of problem solving. I'm going to allow you to use those resources while you take these tests. Here are the caveats to that. Number one, you're going to have absolutely essentially needed to read the material in advance and fill out the PowerPoints that I send you. I send them out in what I call skeletal format, meaning that there's some information on there, but there's some information that's been blanked out and you need to fill that in. You will have a generous amount of time to complete these tests, but you won't have all the time in the world, and I'll explain just a little bit more about that later. So you have to have good notes and you have to have read the material in order to be able to do well, or at least as well as you should, on these tests. If you just jump right in and take the test without reading anything, you're going to be in a world of misery. You have an ample chance all week long to do this work. It's not incredibly difficult nor incredibly time consuming, but that doesn't mean that it's going to take you 10 minutes either. You need to allot some time for reading. If you're a fast reader, that's good. If you're a slow reader, then you just are going to have to find a way to block out time in your schedule in order to do it, because you won't be able to be successful unless you read well and take good notes, because that's what's going to make the difference in your test. You will not have time during the test to take each question as it comes and search it out in the textbook and be able to complete all the questions within the allotted time. Now, the other caveat to that is this: open notes, open textbooks, open internet access, but no collaboration. Now, it would be a little bit challenging sometimes to find these things out, some people would think, but I can find them out. I have ways of finding them out more easily and readily than you think, and I can and will do that if I start to see certain patterns emerge between you. So the only thing that I ask of you in terms of academic dishonesty is that you not collaborate with another student while you're doing these tests. That is grounds for academic dishonesty charges. Let's talk about test questions. You will have one question to answer at a time with one attempt per question. You will not be allowed to backtrack. This is done so that you have to be able to provide an answer to that question and not use the process of elimination by looking at other questions. That's called guessing, and that's not real learning. One question I get a lot is, how many questions are going to be on the test? That in and of itself is a great question, because each chapter is going to vary in nature and scope, and as a result of that, so will the number of questions provided. Some may just be a handful of questions, some may be several dozen questions. You will also need to realize that you will have to complete each test in one sitting. You cannot come back and work on it later. You have to do it all at one time. And again, you'll be given ample time and you'll be told how much time you have. You'll just have to work accordingly and again, have read in advance and prepped your notes well. Otherwise, you will not be successful, I fear. Many of you have probably already encountered Packback. It's a very simple to use online platform on which you answer and ask questions of your peers. Now, we need this because we really lack the interactive elements of live seated class. So this will help just a little bit in that regard. Now, I have set the minimum curiosity score, which is the minimum threshold for receiving credit for these, at 40. Let me tell you this: a few good, well-written sentences plus a link to a credible source, and you've got 40 blasted out of the park. No problem at all. A lot of students last semester, for whatever reason, did not do Packback or do it every week. Ladies and gentlemen, with Packback, I am giving you 20% of your weekly unit score on a platter. It couldn't be much easier to earn that 20% any other way. So make sure that you're doing this. Register through Blackboard. It will allow you to sign in. I believe your fees have already paid for that and so forth with your tuition and books and things like that. Go ahead and use these directions to get registered on Blackboard and you'll be set up. If you need help on that, contact their team. You see the contact information at the bottom. Now let's look at the calendar really quickly. As I promised you, most units will be covered in the span of one single week. However, there are 3 exceptions that I want to call to your attention. First of all is weeks 5 and 6, February 7 through 20. Now notice that is a 2-week period, so it will begin on February 7th and it will not be due until February 20th. Make sure you know that in advance. All of that 2-week period is used or can be used to cover Chapter 4, Packback 4, and Maxwell Chapter 4. Now, another one is spring break. There's nothing at all due that week. You're welcome. And then the second 2-week period is March 28th through April 10th. Again, that opens on March 28th. That closes April 10th. That means you have 2 weeks to do OB Chapter 11, Packback 9, and if you so choose, these 4 instances of the Coach and the Geek. make sure you understand that we're dealing with weeks and units that run pretty well consecutively with those 3 exceptions to that rule. I want to point out one more thing on the calendar for you. The last week is all extra credit. Now, of course, that's provided that we get through this semester unscathed, which in semesters past, recently, we've not been able to do. So if we have to pull this stuff forward in terms of this calendar, we may not be able to have this week 17 be all extra credit. But as it stands now, and I think we can do it, week 17 will be all extra credit opportunities for you from May 2nd through 8th from the book Coach and the Geek. Now, I want to use the remaining time to cover course policies, but I'm going to splice in video from another class. What's red on here will turn blue, but it's still the exact same thing. So make sure you pay close attention to it. It's the exact material that's in your syllabus, copied over from another video from another class. Now let's talk about course policies, of which I really have 4. Now a lot of this is very detailed, but again, remember a lot of this is also coming from the university, not just from me. So understand that a lot of this is university sanctioned. Now, being present for policy number 1 is a little bit different with regard to an online course. But really what this means is simply do your work when it's assigned. That's really what being present means. It doesn't mean necessarily showing up in a certain place at a certain time on a certain day like it does for in-person classes. Now, clearly, stuff happens, as one student so eloquently stated to me one time. I know that stuff happens for me too. It happened a lot last semester. It happened a lot in the spring semester, more so than usual, and it made things difficult. And I know that things can happen like that for you too. Understand, though, you still have the responsibility to quote-unquote show up and do your work. That's an important thing to understand and to remember. Now, some of you may be participating in university-sanctioned activities and programs. That's understandable. Some of you may experience, unfortunately, personal illness. That happens a lot. I would expect for the foreseeable future that to be a major problem for many people. And then also, if you have some military assignment, if that applies to you. And then, of course, anything and everything is subject to happen with regard to our families. But let's be honest about it. Despite the divorce and remarriage rate, more than 3 grandmothers dying in any one semester is probably not statistically possible. So make sure you understand that this particular course gives you a lot of freedom, but you still have the responsibility to do what you need to do. Now, again, if any of these extenuating circumstances arise, please let me know. I will be glad to work with you. As I said, they happen to me, and they're unavoidable, and you have to stop and do what you have to do, and I get that, and I'm totally glad to work with you on that. But you cannot just simply slack along for 5 or 6 weeks and then all of a sudden get convicted about the error of your ways and want to change and not expect some consequences to happen. If there's something legitimate happen, I'm glad to work with you. But otherwise, you have to do what you have to do. Now, when you encounter some of these sticky obstacles, I may very well ask you for proof of that. And that's covered here at the bottom of page 11 and on the top of page 12. You need to read that and make sure you understand it. Now, for final examination policy, I mentioned we're going to use that last week as a contingency week. We don't have a comprehensive final in here. Let me stop and say a quick word about work schedules. Work is very important. Many of you taking this course are probably working full-time. Some of you are working part-time, and I applaud and approve all of you for that. You need to. It's important not just for the money, but also for the experience and the learning. However, the fact that you've signed up for this class does not mean that you can postpone it or bump it to the bottom of your priority list just because of work. This means you will need to complete this particular course in addition to the work that you're doing. So work does not let you off the hook from doing what you've got to do with regard to this class. As before, if you have an emergency and you are in a sticky situation, just as quickly as you can, let me know. You have 4 ways to contact me, and again, email is the preferred way. I'll be glad to work with you, but you've got to let me know. And you can't just come back weeks or months later and tell me, oh, well, back in January, and this is March, I had this particular issue arise. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to let me know when stuff is going on while it's going on. Policy number 2. All of your work is expected to be completed on time unless you make some sort of prior arrangement with me or an immediate contact to me and say, hey, I was in a car wreck this past week. I'm just now out of the hospital. Can I make up the work that I missed? No problem on that. We'll figure out a way. I'll work with you until we get it resolved to your satisfaction and mine. But again, you've got to complete the work by 11:59 p.m. each Saturday outside of any extenuating circumstances and get that in on time. It's just that simple. If you're having problems, let me know. We'll work with you. I will do my best to try to get back to you as quickly as I can whenever you have a question. It's not always easy to do, believe it or not, because I've got a number of different things going as well. But I do keep a close eye on the email, and I will, within 24 hours, get back to you. Usually outside of Monday through Friday, I would ask a 48-hour window because there's going to be some travel this semester, particularly for me. So make sure that you ask me well in advance, at least as much in advance as you possibly can, and I'll try to get back to you just as quickly as I can. But again, I'm not going to be there probably at 2:45 a.m. I hope for my sake that I'm not. With regard to the online nature of this course, we don't really have to worry too much about this class conduct thing. But once in a while, students get their noses bent out of shape about something and smart off on email, and that's not really good. I try to be respectful to you in that regard, and I would ask that you be respectful to me. After all, you're either a professional or a pre-professional, and I am too. So we've got to keep this on a good level, and personal rancor and those kinds of things, it's not good. And it's not good on either side, and I'm not going to do that to you. So make sure that you follow along accordingly, if you will, please. It is your responsibility to secure the textbook. It's going to be hard for you to be successful if you don't read this textbook, and reading the textbook is incumbent upon having a copy of it. It's amazing to me, one, how many students don't read, and then two, how many students don't ever read because they don't ever acquire the textbook. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, please. The person who does not read is no better off than the person who cannot read. And think about what a tragedy it would be if you could not read. That's a problem. That's a major issue, especially in today's world. So make sure that you get the required course textbook. It's not that expensive. I chose it deliberately so that it wouldn't be. Packback is not expensive for you to access. Even the supplemental books can be ordered online. Used copies can be acquired dirt cheap. So make sure that you do that and are ready to be successful. Now, another thing too, dropping the course. Some people think that if they just stop doing work or stop showing up, in the case of a live class, seated class, that I'll drop them. I don't know. I can't tell if they're coming back or not. So I'm not going to drop them. They've paid for the class. They are entitled to continue. Now, it's not a good idea to just not show up or not submit work for an indefinite period of time. So make sure that if you've had enough of me in this course, that you go through the proper procedure for dropping it. Otherwise, I have to give you an F, unfortunately. I'm also surprised when starting this foray into online classes that I've recently begun at how many students don't have what they need to be successful in terms of actually taking an online course. You need internet access. You need a computer. You need other technology tools like maybe even a printer and a scanner and things of that nature. I don't necessarily require all of those things, but if you don't have access to them, it's going to be very difficult for you to successfully complete an online course. So please make sure that you have those materials available. I also spoke with you earlier about how to write an email. Here's another reinforcement of that for your information. The academic integrity policy, again, the only thing you really cannot do in this course is work directly with another individual to submit work. If I find that out, then we're going to have to go down a very long and dark road together, and I'm going to get the better part of it from you. So let's not do that. Make sure you understand that's the only request I've got. You've got open book, that's fine. You've got open notes, that's fine. You've got open internet, that's fine. I'm not going to do the Respondus lockdown. All I'm asking you to do is be man or woman enough to promise me that you're not going to work with somebody while you do this and do it on your own. If I see patterns, and again, I can see and detect those things, if I can see those things, then I'm coming knocking on your door, and we're not going to have a very pleasant conversation. And I don't want to have those conversations with you because I don't get paid enough to be a professor, a policeman, a detective, a prosecuting attorney, a judge, and a jury. I only get paid to be a professor. So make sure that you understand that's my one major request of you with regard to academic integrity. We've talked about deadlines. Without prior arrangement, deadlines stand, period. If you have a problem, I'm glad to help you with makeup work, but again, you've got to contact me and we've got to work on an arrangement for that. I don't know why you would want to record this stuff, and there's not going to be all that much to record, but the answer is no. A bigger mystery to me than anything that I have faced in the last few semesters is this statement on a required face covering. I don't know why we have to put this in the syllabus for an online class, but we do. So there it is. And on we go. In terms of a campus closure, we have been told by the powers that be that this course will go on. The show must go on. It's the number one rule of show business, and that's the number one rule of an online class this semester, or so we are told. So plan on continuing unless you hear otherwise from me or from the university. The Title IX policy is there for you to read at the bottom of page 16. The privacy policy is at the top of page 17. This is for those students who like to have their parents or their therapist or their priest or another professor, and I've had all those things intervene on their behalf to try to leverage me to increase their grade or something of that nature. The bottom line is this: unless I get a directive from one of my bosses, I'm not going to discuss your standing in this particular course with anyone but you. I don't care if you have signed the FERPA waiver or anything like that. This is not between me and your parents. This is not between me and your therapist. This is not between me and another professor. This is between me and you. So the answer to that is no, I'm not going to do that. Now, again, if I get a directive from a boss of mine to do it, then I will. If student athletes have academic or athletic department personnel coming over and wanting and needing to discuss that, then certainly I have to do that as well, and I'm glad to do it. But otherwise, I don't discuss your standing in this course with anybody but you, period. The statement of non-discrimination is also on page 17, as is the disability accommodation. Let me say a word about that. For the most part, the online class kind of takes care of itself, and I give you plenty of time to do what you need to do. But if there is another issue that you encounter that prohibits you from successfully completing this course based on a disability, please contact the DRC. You see their contact information in this paragraph, and they can help me help you better. Don't just approach me about it. Approach them first and work through them to help me help you. The last page is the pledge page. Now you'll notice, and somehow some people missed this entirely over the course of the last previous semester or two. Read this syllabus and this form carefully. I want you to complete it and sign and date it and then scan it and email that to my graduate assistant before 11:59 p.m. on January 16th. Otherwise, you and I are going to have a very unpleasant encounter via email, so make sure that you do that for me. And you see, you'll need to fill in your name here, and at the bottom you'll need to sign and date it. Then email that in to my grad assistant. In case you didn't know, you can do that very easily with a smartphone. If nothing else, just take a picture of it and email it from your phone. You don't have to necessarily print it out and scan it and all that stuff. Just make sure you get your name in that first blank, get a signature in that blank, and a date in that blank, and you're good to go. I hope this was of help to you. Please let me know certainly if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to further help you if I can.